moving to the stopgap budget now. Was that deal a success in your view?
Well, it's a good step in the right direction. The real success, what the people of Illinois really need, are truly balanced budgets with reforms to grow more jobs and protect our taxpayers and get democracy restored. That's what we really need. But Speaker Madigan's majority said no to reforms until after the November election. I think they're hoping that they gain more power after the election and won't have to get reform. So I hope the people of Illinois stand up for reforms and reformers. But between now and then, we had to get through that. We had to make sure our schools opened on time. We had to make sure that our essential human services and public safety got funded. So we did a stopgap. The stopgap did three very important good things for the people of Illinois. First, we did not support and we blocked Speaker Madigan's wildly out of balance budget that was $7 billion in deficit that would have forced a big tax hike with no reforms. We blocked that, and now we're spending at a much more affordable, reasonable level. So that was a good step. Number two, we got schools open on time with an affordable amount more money. All schools got some more money. They can open on time and we could properly support our teachers. That's a good step in the right direction. And I insisted that we go to the full foundation level for the first time in 7 years. That's the essential amount we need for our schools to be fully supported, and we got that done. I was very proud of that. And we were able to do it without bailing out Chicago public schools. Chicago schools have been mismanaged for decades. They have huge deficits and debt. And Speaker Madigan's majority in the General Assembly was insisting that Illinois state taxpayers send $500 million more up to Chicago to bail it out. We said no, we stood against that, and we were able to defeat that effort. Chicago, we are going to send a little bit more money to Chicago, but all schools around the state are going to get some more on a proportionate basis, and that's fair, and that's a win-win for everybody. And then finally, the one other thing we got done, pension reform is now front and center on the table. We passed a pension parity bill that will become law only if all pensions around the state get significant reform that can save taxpayers billions. We need to protect the existing pension benefits that our state employees have earned. They deserve to get those benefits. But for future work, we need a more affordable system of options for our employees that can save taxpayers money. And that's going to get voted on now after November, and that's very exciting.
Has anything changed in the last year when it comes to hope for compromise? Because in our area, that's all people care about.
I don't think much has changed with the Speaker. He's been the most powerful politician in the state for 35 years. He doesn't like change. He doesn't want reform. He's never had to compromise. He's been in total control. We've stood up against him and forced him to change. The reason I'm optimistic is the Speaker's not changing, but his caucus, the Democratic members in the General Assembly, are beginning to stand up to him and say, no, we can't keep going in the direction. We can't keep doing just what Chicago wants. We need to do what's right for our local communities. Now, not enough members in the General Assembly are changing. We need more to stand up to him. Here in Southern Illinois, we have some members of the supermajority who haven't stood up to him and have supported the Speaker. We need everybody to come together, stand up and get reforms. We need term limits, fair maps, workers' comp reform, and local control to get unfunded mandates out of Springfield. The Speaker doesn't want to change, but we need the people of Illinois to let their elected officials know it's time for reform. We need to stand up for reformers.
You're in a position that is, supposed to try and bring these parties together, get a deal. What can you, in your position, do to achieve that?
It shows how broken the system is that it's taken so long to get reform. But we brought together working groups, Democrats and Republicans in working groups in the General Assembly to work out compromise, and they made great progress. In fact, they were on the verge of announcing in May agreements on workers' comp reform, local control to get property taxes down, pension reform. They were about to announce it. Speaker Madigan heard about the announcement and the agreements, and he stamped it, put it out, prevented it for now, and said none of that until after November. But I think we're on the verge of having people in the General Assembly come together and do real reform. And we encourage that. We help make it happen. And I'm optimistic about it.
You've pushed for these reforms. That's got to be part of a comprehensive deal. It makes people skeptical that one can be achieved just because the only way we got this short term was by putting them on the back burner.
Yeah, well, the reason we got the short term was because we got agreement that the reforms are going to be on the table in November. That's the reason the deal got done. The reforms are not dead or completely put to the side. They were just agreed that we were going to be voted on in November. I'd rather vote now. I don't think that the election should have anything to do with it. We should vote and do our jobs now. We're elected to get things done. Let's get the reforms done at the moment. Speaker Madigan said no, he wants to wait until after the election. I think he's hoping that he'll keep power, in fact enhance his power, then he won't have to do reforms. But I believe that the people of Illinois will stand up and support reformers, and I believe that members in the General Assembly will come together and pass good reforms after November. Every significant change that's happened in Illinois has happened in the lame duck session after a general election. That's what's coming up in November, December. So I'm cautiously optimistic we can get good things done.
What message do you have to those people who have been suffering? That's all they see about this budget impasse is we're not getting our services. Can you react to that and tell them, how will your reforms help them? Why is this worth it?
Well, here's the bottom line. Illinois can't afford to be compassionate to help our most vulnerable, the folks who are most in need, unless we are also competitive. We have been losing our jobs, we've been eroding our tax base for years, and we haven't been paying our bills for 10 years now. Many of our human service agencies haven't been getting paid. It's not just right this past year for the budget impasse. They have not been getting paid or getting paid a year or two late for a long, long time. The system is broken. The system has to change. If we get reforms to grow the economy, protect our taxpayers, and get term limits and fair maps so that democracy works for the people again, we'll have the money, we'll have the economic growth to fund our human services. I'm an advocate. I'm a big donor and funder to many of the human service agencies that have been hurt over the last 10 and 20 years. I support them. We have got to get balanced budgets with reform so we can properly fund them, and that's what we're fighting to do.
In my coverage of the budget, this is this is kind of an interview that shocked me the most that I did at SIU. You know, an institution that has had to make severe cuts. They did get money from the short-term deal, but they're already looking at layoffs, cutting programs. I've spoken with students there who's saying, I'm leaving. I spoke with one faculty member who had been there a decade and said, I want to move to New Mexico and take a job there. He's looking into that. Yeah. That's the stuff that worries me about SIU because of how important they're a research institution, and to keep up quality education, you have to have those faculty members that are there for decades, those students that want to come, the money for research. And people are leaving because they don't trust Illinois to pay anymore.
Yes, it's a huge problem, and it's one of the main reasons I ran for governor. We need to properly support our educational institutions, K to 12, but also our universities. Back 30, 40, 50 years ago, we had the best universities in America. We have been cutting university support in Illinois for decades. This is not a recent event. This is not just in the past year. We have been cutting state support for our educational institutions. That's wrong. The reason is because we've been losing our jobs, because our tax base has been eroding, because our property taxes are so high, working families have left, we lead the nation in out-migration. This has been going on for decades. It's created a crisis. Southern Illinois University is one of the greatest universities in the country. They deserve our support. Again, we can't have the money, we don't have the money to support them if we don't have balanced budgets with strong economic growth. And we can't balance our budgets if we're not growing. Here's a simple fact. We have fewer jobs in Illinois today than we had 17 years ago. We have lower family incomes than we had 17 years ago. We will never have the money to support SIU properly if we don't grow. If we had just grown at the nation's average the last 15 years, you know what? We wouldn't have a deficit, we wouldn't have any unpaid bills, and we'd have $13 billion more in the state treasury to fund SIU. Economic growth is the key. We've got to reform the system, restore democracy, and we can get a lot of good support for SIU so we can keep it world class.